You're listening to Errol Parker and Clancy Overall, editors of the Betoota Advocate on Desert Rock FM. And welcome back to the Betoota Advocate podcast. This week we are going straight into part 2 of the Brendan Cowell interview. We had such a great yarn with Brendan, we couldn't chop it down short enough, so we've done a 2-parter with him. Last week we spoke about, the life and times of the career from being an Australian soap opera star into a writer, into, I guess you'd say, a Hollywood superstar working with James Cameron. And this week we're kind of talking about, his journey in London, living in Notting Hill, when he actually got the role that made him quite famous overseas in Game of Thrones, and how he celebrated that famous 2017 Cronulla Sharks grand final while living in England, where not many other people could understand how excited he was. And then, of course, going into last year, where he actually caught coronavirus in what he explains as a very, very dark time in his life, and his recovery from that, and his journey back to the top, his glow up, if you will. Thank you for tuning in. This is Brendan Cowell, part 2. What's it like there now? Because, I guess when you work with Australians, they know who you are. And then, But do you also, when you get, working in different countries and you get a gig like that, whether they're filming in New Zealand or filming in England or filming in America, do you feel like you're starting your career all again as a kind of, now you're an outsider, you're basically starting from scratch in another kind of industry and another kind of,
that was definitely the move to London.
Yeah.
Is that I felt a bit like a big fish in a small pond, and especially with my partying and Ruben and everything. I started, a few things that happened in the media, and I suddenly kind of just went, I can always come back to Australia with my tail between my legs. I'm going to go and have a crack. And the great thing was I could reinvent my personality over there a bit as well and go, who do you want to be, mate? And who are you? And over there, it's so accepting over there. Yeah. Every culture's there. Every walk of life is on in every tube carriage.
Yeah.
And the plays I do, it wasn't diversity casting. It was just the best actors were from, Brazil and Africa and Scotland. And it was just wonderful to get on stage with people from all around the world and the best actors from all around the world. And it blew my mind. And I had to start again. And I re-established a passion for acting over there, because I was starting to make films, and I went over there and I went, I want to see how good I can be again, and I want to test it again.
Not many people do that once they've crossed that bridge. Like you, you did the screen adaptation of The Slap.
Yeah.
So you didn't write that.
That's what took me to London first.
Yeah,
because The Slap was huger over there than it was here, because it played with class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And everything in Britain's got to be about class.
Yeah,
Doesn't matter what murder drama or anything you're making. It has to be about the class system.
Yeah.
And that was about, the poor artist not having the lawyers to match the rich Greek guy.
Yeah,
Who's like the kid, you know what I mean? And they just loved that.
Yeah, yeah.
And the fact that I wrote the Harry episode, which was Alex Dimitriadis' character who slaps the kid, they were like, you wrote that out, we loved that. And that got nominated and stuff. So that was my entry into London.
Yeah.
And that's why I went over to kind of follow that TV writing thing.
Yeah.
That fell to the side because I didn't stop acting for 5 years.
Yeah. And,
it went bananas.
But once people get that director-writer credit, they don't tend to go back, and you're like drawn back into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I loved it. And it's just wide open over there, the jobs that come in, that then do come in here. And that's not a criticism to either culture. It was just kind of amazing for me. But also when I'd been there as a playwright, often the reviews of my plays would start with, as far as Aussie playwrights go, as far as,
The Antipodean.
the Antipodean play, if that is even a thing. This playwright attempts to talk about sibling rivalry and fails, And it had that, like, why are you even here, home and away boy, And whereas this time I went over, I don't know what it was, but people were like, come in, get on stage, play Galileo.
Yeah.
And no one in the reviews of Galileo mentioned I was Australian.
Yeah.
Nor in Yerma, and it was like, what's happened here?
Yeah.
And suddenly, I think it was London. It was just London became a world city, and there was, there's still the Australian jokes, and you still get run down on every set, but that's just friendly fire, you know, and you can fire it back over there. And that's what's really great. And
the Americans are like, what's wrong with you?
Yeah, exactly.
This guy's such an asshole. Like,
but no, the Americans are like, why are you being so mean to your friend? It's like, no, I love him.
Like, they're so sarcastic. He said he loved my shirt.
I mean, what do they think of? Have Americans taken on your show? Where do they connect with the tone?
No. We went over there and met Will Ferrell and
John C. Reilly.
And we did a bit of a junket thing with them, and all they could say were like, okay, so Queensland, why didn't you tell me? I did 2 movies in Queensland.
Queensland.
I guess, you know, when you've got an Akuba on, you can easily be kind of
you Aussies are great.
Well, Australians would immediately think Crocodile Dundee, and you know, that's where you get kind of compartmentalised, which I guess we're happy with. Keep your distance.
I was kind of, I mean, America, if you can make the money, they don't care where you're from. If you're hot, and I've never been hot, you know, so I've never really gone there. And if I am hot, I'll go. But if not, then I can't think of anything worse.
But you haven't had your Hollywood moments coming in 2 months now, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, my theory in 2 months. No, it's next year.
Oh, right. Next December. Okay.
But, you know, this sounds like faux humility, which is very common in my line of work. Because, you know, people are all like, they'll kill their sister for a job, but then when they get it, they go, I just can't believe it. Like, I am just so surprised that you would even think of me. Meanwhile, they're like, get out of the
way. You told us that, Jan, that the Australian actor narrative is, I was just throwing shit in a skip bin out front of NIDA, and one of me mates from the work site dared me to go and audition. I didn't want to, and then I got in, and here I am.
I turned up there. I'd been out on the tiles all night drinking fucking Carlton Draft.
I had a black eye at the audition, and they
I punched the director. So it's that kind of a thing, but I don't know. I'll see what happens, but, you know, I was telling my mate, a photographer who's living in LA, and it was kind of like, I reckon if you go overseas and you get a bank account, a travel card, and a visa, and a car, and a house, and you live overseas for a year or 5 years, you're a major success.
Yeah, right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
You know, not just living a new life, finding new friends, but being accepted there and getting a bank account and living in another country. I just think anyone who does it is a success. And, you know, I've got a couple of TV shows I'm writing, I've got a book coming out, got some acting later on the year. I'm a success. That'll do me. So I don't, like, that's all I want to do is wake up and engage with work. So, and I hope that doesn't sound like faux humility. Of course, if the films get bigger, for me, that means access to a guy like Paul Thomas Anderson or something. You know what I mean? Or to working with Marion Cotillard or something. You know, I just worked with Giovanni Ribisi and Edie Falco and Sigourney Weaver. What, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? Like, so for me, that's it. You know, is that I got to then go to the bar after shooting and sat there and talked to, you know, Giovanni till 1 o'clock in the morning about all the films he's done and exchange phone numbers, you know, and have the odd text. And you're like,
try not to text him too much.
No, he said, try not to text him too much. And that's the hard thing when you're in a hotel for 7 months with famous people and you're getting on well, and you're like, he said maybe a bushwalk tomorrow. You're in the morning at 11. You're going, I'm about to go to the bushwalk. Do I go for it with the? Do you want a bushwalk, Giovanni? Like, you never. And they're like, why didn't you tell me, bro? I would have gone with you. And you're like, well, I had a panic attack over whether famous people mean they want to go on a bushwalk with a non-famous Australian guy. And so you're back to year 4, you know, trying to approach
new kid at the new school,
But, you know, it's the same thing. Every actor's in their own head. I don't get nervous around actors because I know what's in their head. And that's fear. And they're trying to connect with the truth and do a good job. I get nervous around musicians because I'm a failed one. And I just like, how do you know how to do all that? And you're a genius. And I get nervous around dudes from Boy and Bear. You know what I mean? Like anyone, any band. You know, because I'm like, I want to be in a band. I want to be talented. You know, when I met Robert Smith, like,
There's some Aussie actors that have proven you can do both.
Yeah. 30-odd foot of cow is coming out, you know, but I'm a 6 out of 10 bass player, you know what I mean? And, you know, yeah, so all actors are the same in that way. And but the really good actors, you know, they're humble and they're good listeners, you know what I mean? And you will get your shot. I think every actor gets their time and, you know, to have a look at it.
Do you think this whirlwind kind of last couple of years is why you've come back to writing Plum, which is basically not set in London, that's for sure.
Yeah, America.
Set in that same bar, that same tavern we started this podcast talking about, the Casbah. You got themes of gambling addiction and very Australian kind of issues going on. I get divorce and, you know, and of course now we've got the added pressure of sports science. That's kind of haunting a lot of men into their you know, middle ages. Is that where it came from? Just sitting there and looking at this surreal life. You've got the Pakistani kind of curry house next door. You're living in London. You know, you're hanging around with that's not Cronulla.
Yeah, you're on the tube.
Yeah,
mind the gap.
You're catching rail to work.
It's kind of, you know, the best films about Australia have been made from overseas directors. You know what I mean? And Wake and Fried and Walkabout, and I feel like it was good to write about Australia from the Northern Hemisphere.
From away,
you know, because when you get here, you get caught up in it, and you can't see it because you are it. And being in London, I can kind of see Australia really clearly, and coming back, you can kind of see where's casual racism at, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. And everything's really illuminated. And now I'm back in Australia. I feel like I live in Australia now. I've been back 6 months, you know. And all the beauty is suddenly so stunning. I mean, the eastern suburbs now, not Newtown, and it's just like, what the hell is going on over here? I mean, nobody looks happy. Everyone's quite unhappy, but you know, it is so spectacular. But
Sydney is pretty.
Sydney is extra. The east coast of New South Wales is mind blowing, and I made a big change in my life a few years ago. So it was kind of about that, and it was kind of about a second chapter. And I've always wanted to write about my uncle and guys in Cronulla and that kind of lo-fi suburban guy. And just kind of like what happens after 45. And mates and just how much you mean to each other, how much male friendship means.
Well, you see it with the old Italians and Greeks. They get to sit out front of the cafe until they die, you know, like the 90-year-old. But you don't really see that so much in the, you know, the white Anglo kind of suburbs, do you? You don't really know where those blokes end up once the kids are out of school.
And what are those golf trips about? And what are those punting groups about? And what's happening between men? And there's something really beautiful happening between men, but it's a language not everyone can read. And what do they do when they really need each other? And what do they do when they're shit scared? And how do you say to your mate, I'm really scared, I'm 100K in the hole, or I'm having an affair with the neighbour, or whatever's going on, or I've just got a reading from the doc. The heart reading is at the high end of high, not the high end of normal. You know what I mean? And so that it kind of deals with that. Like, what do you bloody do as an Aussie male when you need another Aussie male to go along with you? And I found making my change, I needed other people as well. I can't do it on my own. You need a community, and I think in masculine terms, the old version of bravery was drink 20 scooters, get in a fight, get up, go to work, play on the weekend. You know, all that stuff was courage. Now courage is probably admitting to all that stuff and asking for help. You know what I mean? And it's somewhere in that middle ground. So
nowadays you kind of look at that guy and think, what's going on, mate? Whereas back in the day, you'd look at him and go, man, what a legend. He goes so hard.
He's killing it.
He drinks all night and then plays football all day. And then he goes and fights someone. We're like, whoa, he's a legend. Nowadays, you're kind of like, everything all right at home, mate?
Exactly. And it's, you know, if you don't put stuff down in your 20s, you drag it into your 30s, it's actually gets solidified. And it's like almost impossible to crack out of your 40s. You know what I mean? And then you have what I call the sniper zone in your 40s with health, where you get one phone call, it's like, you're in big trouble here. And you're like, I could either get through this one or not. And then I might be right for a while. And we all have one. We all have that little visit. It's like, hang on, what's happening? There's a bit of stuff in the family. And so it deals with all that. And, and also his relationships with four women, his ex-wife who, they've kind of been very mean to each other, but they probably would be the person that's there for each other you know, the most, and the love of his life, his girlfriend, who he just can't seem to get it right with. And then this British girl is confined to a wheelchair, he sees recite a poem called "Swap with Me, I'll Swap with You," about how we all have the same amount of exchangeable pain.
Yep.
And she gets him into writing poems, and then he gets visited by poets at certain down and out moments in his life. And so it's the relationships with those women that he has to mend. And it's like, do you just keep doing shithead dude?
Yeah.
Or maybe after you've had your footy career or your acting career and kids are teenagers, or you didn't have kids, maybe you can go like do a 180 and have a completely different crack at life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because God knows I'd try. I've drunk it. I've been pissed in every bar all over the world.
Yeah.
I've had all the parties. I've had all the fun. I was like,
You've resisted the road bike.
what's the road bike?
You've resisted the Lycra for your rebrand. Like,
Yeah. No,
That's fucking dangerous doing that. I mean, there is like
You
this
think drinking in every pub's safer than
fucking oath it
riding the
is.
bike around?
Absolutely.
especially
It's
in
gotta
fucking Australia. I mean, every week you read about some poor bastard ending up under a fucking Kenworth or a Mac or something.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Yeah.
If you wear Lycra that often, it's got to suck up the testicle. Like, it's got to have a long-term effect. And also,
not for
they
me.
just take over a cafe, don't they? 16 of them, like, all having
Fucking
a
those stupid shoes. You
I
know,
love
like,
it. I do like you see him having a ciggy too. You're like, what? You've just ridden 50 Ks. You're going to punch a dough?
And you've got to be going fast. They have to be going lightning fast to justify that outfit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, no one dresses up and doesn't go at the speed of light. Like, I'm only dressing up like that if I'm fully professional. But
It's
no,
interesting that cycling is the one that, you know, even the Macho Man Prime Minister, Tony Abbott, was doing it and it was totally okay. It's weird how that has been something men have allowed as an acceptable kind of later life.
yeah. And golf.
Yeah, and golf. And
I mean,
golf.
shoot me if I ever play golf.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to see poetry be that, you know.
Yeah, why not?
Very much an
Well,
option.
in my first book, it was like, why don't men talk to each other? And my second book's like, men will never talk to each other.
Yeah.
So maybe they could write some stuff down and help each other do something, you know, physically. You know what I mean? Like, go and pick up your car that you left at the airport or whatever like that, or go and blow up a car or whatever it is that you need to do. We can connect in other ways because we are there for each other. We are loyal. And that happens on the footy field.
Yeah.
You know, and we cry at the footy and all that kind of stuff. So Plum's in a conundrum that, you know, I can very much relate to, and I feel like I wanted to write a book about that, about having a second crack at life. And also, you know, I don't know if my third book will be set in Cronulla, will be the Cronulla trilogy or not, but the book is kind of about the world in a lot of ways as well. Yeah.
Did you enjoy the experience of writing a book? Like, how does it compare to writing, you know, for the screen?
Yeah, you can't do anything else.
Yeah.
Whereas writing for the screen, you can kind of be working on a few projects I've found. Maybe that's why my screen stuff's not always very good. I don't know. But it's all consuming, you know. And when lockdown happened, you know, at that time in London, I had 10 shows booked. I was going to Italy, all the London stuff that you do. And then suddenly it was like, oh, you can't go to a restaurant, you can't leave the house ever, you know, and it was just like bang. And then I went, you know, and I had this idea about a footy guy that gets into poetry, a concussed footy guy who has a degenerative brain disease. And it was going to be a TV show, and there was actually a company that wanted to make it. And I was talking to my friend Fiona Series over there, a writer, and she said, it's a book, mate. And then I went, oh, hang on, the world has stopped, and I think it might be stopped for a while.
Yeah.
I'm gonna write this book. And so I mapped it all out, and it took about 10 weeks to kind of get it all out. And it was beautiful because in the morning you just write exploratively, and it's vomitous, and you get this huge thing out. And then I'd go for a walk, have lunch or whatever, and then come back, and then I'd revise it at night. And that was my process every day for those 10 weeks. But, I mean, I love the word. You know, the best part of my writing is the writing itself. Structure and storytelling I've had to work on. I've had to learn my craft, and I've learnt that in front of the audience, you know, because I didn't really ever study it. So I just read a lot of books, but it was great because I got to fly with language, and that's my favourite part of it. But it can really do your head in because you're carrying so much. You know, you're carrying a mountain of stuff the whole time. But once I matched with Catherine Mellon at HarperCollins and she got the book and we went for another draft, I suddenly felt less alone. And because I cried a lot writing the book, I thought I was onto something really special. But I sent it out to some publishers who were like, a sports book? And I went, no, it's not a sports book. Like, it's not a rugby league book.
The autobiography of...
And it is actually for the guy that only reads that book. I hope he reads it. But it's a literary book about pain. You know what I mean? And about saving yourself from yourself. And so when Catherine, who's just incredible, connected with it, the next draft, suddenly I went, oh, I'm not crazy. And then it became beautiful, you know?
Yep.
Well, we've managed to get through this entire interview without mentioning like the most tortured example of confused and insecure masculinity to come out of Cronulla, which is the Prime Minister.
Yeah.
How are you, as someone who's obviously fighting for that #1 ticket holder at Cronulla Sharks?
Well, I had it.
You had it?
Yeah.
Did he take it from you?
Well, maybe. Who else is in there?
I don't know, probably ex-players. Like, that's the thing about Cronulla is...
Michael Clark.
Is Clark, yeah, right.
Elle McPherson, I think. I've never seen any of these people at a game. Oh, no, is Michael Clark a Tigers fan, maybe?
Yeah, no, he goes for Wests.
Yeah, he goes for West, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So what is it like seeing the Prime Minister, who is obviously a controversial figure? We won't ask you any opinions like that, but seeing someone like him
does
become...
his best, mate.
Someone like him become the face of your club, which you obviously care a lot about.
Yeah, I do. Even when I try, I get drawn back. Like, even when I try to get out of there, I just get dragged back into the shark net. Like, it's just it's long COVID.
Yeah.
You know, it's just happening. And I wonder if COVID is a secret, you know, disease created by book publishers to trap people in their houses to bring the novel back. Who knows? But do you know what? I will say this honestly. I never saw him in a game. I was at Shark Park since I was 4.
Yeah.
You know, and if we made the finals, we'd play under sixes there. My sister, you know, would date Luke Massey and, you know, and a few of the players. And it was Mecca. It was the place that I was going to, you know, hopefully play and all that kind of stuff. And so it was... you know, part of my landscape, and then as a fan, I was on the hill. I can still walk on that hill, and all of the guys I was in year 10 with are in the same spot, and you just continue the conversation. You know what I mean? This one curve.
Where were we last home game?
Net Strata. Now I take my cousin and my mum to Net Strata, and it's great. And you know, you have a Coke Zero, you buy a beanie, and you leave. You know, and but I used to stand on that hill, and the banter was unbelievable until it gets to, you know, you're losing into the second half. But yeah, I saw Scotty. It was actually a few years ago. I was coming on after a radio guy to do 15 minutes of my passion for, and then maybe a few quiz or raffle questions or something like that. Because especially in the Ricky Stewart era, I was kind of the B-grade celebrity guy that was brought into the sheds and stuff. And I did their, you know, Christmas party, and I went on the cruise. And
Jesus, you must have done some living.
And, me and Brett Seymour and Greg Bird and, you know.
E.T.
Well, E.T. coached me when I made reps.
Right.
You know, in under 12s.
Oh,
E.T. was the coach, and I remember saying, go dealer and stuff.
And Matty Rogers, or you know,
Matty Rogers, and I was in the same team as Adam Dykes. You know, Adam Dykes was in the year below us, but he'd come up and score 10 tries for our team. You know, but
and Matty Johns, he was down there.
Matty was down there a bit, not his finest period. But no, I never saw Scotty at a game until he became Prime Minister.
Well,
and I don't know if that's just a criticism.
They say the same thing about that Pentecostalism as they say about the Sharks. There's no gatekeepers. You know, you wouldn't be able to pull that off with the Bunnies. You wouldn't be able to walk in there one day and say, I've been here forever.
You couldn't do that at the Roosters. You couldn't do that at the fucking Dragons.
Like, Cronulla's kind of like, they're like...
You can't just walk in there and
there's a lot of we'll have you about the Sharks.
You reckon?
I mean, there's a lot of loyalists.
I just think we didn't notice you. Because we're at the beach. You know, it's pretty blasé.
And you look like...
Like, we're never going to do the Viking clap. You know, like, if we start to do the shark jaw, and, fin. You know, like the fin or something, 90% of the crowd would be like, fuck the fin. You know? I want to do that fin. You know, and that's Cronulla culture. You know, whereas, and I think the teams from more difficult areas have those fans, like, because life's harder. Whereas when you live in heaven on a, you know, on the beach, you're like, I'm pretty relaxed about how the Sharks
We
go.
didn't notice you. You look like the archetype of someone who would be talking about the Liberal Party in Cronulla.
I mean,
so like,
it was an easy transition for the Prime Minister because, you know, it's the same colour as the Waratahs, you know. So he didn't have to buy a
didn't
new
have to get a
jersey.
new
He
scarf.
just- no,
but when I saw him, he was 4 rows. I was there with a girlfriend at the time, and he was 4 rows ahead of me. And I think we were playing Canberra to make the finals or something, and we ended up getting beaten. But we were ahead, and then Canberra came back and killed us a couple of years ago. And he was whooping the scarf
The
above the head.
helicopter with the scarf.
I was like, I've never seen that move in league circles.
Yeah, why you
or
mate,
stands.
We're
Have
playing
you
for,
seen the scarf swing?
we're playing to get into the
No.
finals too. It's like
Yeah.
it's not cold enough for a scarf.
Yeah, and it's also not. It was more suitable to one of those kind of festive shows with horses that you take the family to when
Yeah.
you're heading to Noosa. And the show ponies come out and everybody's whipping around the lasso.
The Outback
like-
Spectacular.
Yeah.
Like it's more
Exactly.
of, something you'd see down at Crystal Palace or something, or over at, Craven Hill or,
It felt too cocky for Cronulla as well. Like we would never stick the nail in or the boot in because we know it's going to really quickly come back and get us. The moment you think good things are happening for Cronulla,
The
4
old
days later, there's
Cronulla
a
bed
drug
shit.
/ peptide /
There's erosion.
salary, there's erosion. So we would never, ever tempt the gods with a scarf above the head. And that's how I know there was a lack of authenticity there.
I think Albanese is going to have to ask him to name the entire side on the floor in question time. I reckon he'd struggle.
I said this on the rush hour. I said I want him to tell me what position David Peachey played. I want him to tell me what the Amco Cup was. I want to say what year did Gavin Miller, becoming a Sharks immortal? Like
what year did you win the Premiership?
What year did we win the Premiership? I mean, that was my greatest year of my life because I went straight from Premiership into Game of Thrones literally the next day, and I thought, I don't know if it can get any better for me.
You were in, were you in? Did you follow that trophy back to Cronulla?
Well, I was in London.
Yeah, right.
And my mates kept saying, you're coming back for semis because we'd won that 15 in a row. And I was like, no, this is clearly happening because I'm not at home. Like, because it's that much to do with me that I went, I'm going to stay abroad. Because I don't want to.
You're talking about their success is because I'm not in the country.
Yeah. So I wasn't coming back to the semis. I'm like, I'm staying over here because I don't want them to stop winning. And then I had about 25 people in my living room at 8 a.m. on a Sunday because, that was the time the grand finals on the Coronas from 8 a.m. And the next morning I had my makeup call for Game of Thrones in Belfast. And I had to get on like a 4:45 plane out of Luton or something to go to Belfast. We won. I don't know if you guys remember. We won. And then I had Damien Irvine, who was the ex-chairman, and I had a whole bunch of Aussies and comedians, and any Australian I could find in London was there. I went out up to the Cow. I went to every pub in Notting Hills singing Up Cronulla. I went upstairs to the landlord's house till about 3 a.m. till Mum came up and was like, you've got to get on a plane to Belfast in an hour. And I was like, what? And she's like, this is your big break, your big opportunity, and look what you're doing. And I'm like, up Cronulla, and she goes, you're going to ruin this. And I got straight on the plane. I only took my passport. I had a tracksuit on, took the Sharks tracksuit, took the passport, nothing else. And I went through, I was red, haggard, pissed, everything. I walk into makeup, and the makeup artist goes, just come exactly like that.
You look like a fantasy.
Yeah. She goes, you look like you've been at sea for 200 years. This is exactly what we want. We'll just put a big scar there, which will be a metal cleaver, and you're fantastic. So it all worked well.
Yeah, that's great.
But no, I hadn't seen Scotty there before, and he shook my hand a couple of times, and
loved you in the castle, mate.
Tell him he's streaming, But, and he always talks about, I love sport, I love the theatre of it. I'm like, well, I've never seen you the fucking theatre, mate. Like, if you love the theatre of it,
mate,
why aren't you at Belvoir, you fucker?
The theatre's not for me, mate.
Well, it's you said before that it's kind of like, I didn't want to jinx Cronulla by being in the country, but it was very much the opposite as well. It's like, maybe I'm jinxing my career by going back for a grand final.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That was the secret message. Absolutely. And, I love London. I connected with it. I want to go back. I nearly went back a few months ago, and I thought, is it better to kind of hide away here or to go and face it there. And I just feel like there's a different type of hell wherever you go at the moment, and it depends upon your brand of hell. You know, it's difficult over there. There's, you know, the schools have got kids and teachers with it, and there's people still dying because Delta doesn't give a fuck. Like the song says, it's born to try. You know what I mean? And it will try and try and try, and it seems so. You know, I feel like the word "with," as you said earlier, living with. It's no one's fault. It's not Melbourne's, not Sydney. It's not anyone. It's this thing's bigger than us.
Yeah.
We've got to work together.
We're lucky we were able to have like a relatively manageable strain while we were inventing the vaccine. Like imagine if we were hit with Delta off the bat, we'd be fucked because the lockdown doesn't.
But I was listening to old, you know, Tegan Taylor and Norman Swan yesterday on the Corona cast. A great 11 minutes every day, and they've got a lovely flirty timber between them that I love. And Norm, she proposed a good question. It's like, is the original coronavirus gone now? Delta's in. Where's that guy? Like, what's that? Because I got that one last year. I had it for 8 weeks. Okay. I'm a survivor. It's awful.
Yeah.
Like, I thought I was going to die.
You got the good dose. You got the first one.
No, I got it. Yeah.
So what did it do to you?
It's just like
You're about the first person I've ever touched who's fucking got it.
And luckily we're doing this on Zoom. You know, it could. My long COVID could still be. No, it's everything the word sick is, but all the sicknesses you've ever had. At once. So you feel you're gonna vomit. And my nerves were tingling like I had 1,000 ants under my skin. And I wanted to be sick the whole time, and I couldn't move, and I had no energy, and a noise in my head, and my feet felt weird.
8 weeks, you reckon?
8, 9 weeks. And the thing with London was you couldn't go to the doctor until you had a negative result. So they sent you out a test, which took 2 weeks. Then it took 10 days for them to take it away. And also, I don't think I did the test right because I can't shove a thing up my nose like that voluntarily. You can't get it that far doing it on your own.
You need like a cold-blooded nurse to do that.
I actually don't mind the feeling.
I don't mind the feeling. I mean, with Avatar, I had it 3 times a week.
I've gone to go and get a test because I kind of liked the first one.
Sadistic.
I was like, fuck, that's a strange feling, isn't it?
Especially when you've been in lockdown, you're a bit lonely. It's like, I'll take what I can get. And it's just like a little bit of nasal penetration on Tuesday afternoon. And
I mean, like they go down the back of your throat, and they lube it up and they shove it up your nose.
And they text you the next day.
Is that what the back of my throat smells like? Fucking you dead, you know.
Well, these ones you had to go nose, snap it off. And then tonsil with the other end. And then put that in a tube. And doing that all on my own in front of the mirror. So I got a negative, and then it wasn't till I got the blood test that saw that it was in there.
Yeah, right.
But also it was 3 weeks before I got a result, so then I could go to the doctor and, you know, in a PPE. I remember being on Zoom to Mum and my sister and just literally collapsing, like kind of passing out and go, I got to go, and collapsing onto the floor. And a lot of the time, I genuinely thought I might die. You know, and I had friends.
I'm sure the news cycle was just great alongside your own personal battle.
It was a shocker, and I just had a bit of heartbreak as well. I had a girl, you know, who was there with me, and that didn't end up well. The lockdown situation, like it was all like, I think this is as bad as life can get. And I was in a basement flat, you know, in Notting Hill. So my eyes just saw feet going past. And it was like, I'm underground. And then rats started coming out.
Oh, no.
And that's a part of London that people don't tell you about.
No, then mice started coming out.
The alpha male rat.
I remember, like, I was lying in my sofa bed at 10 a.m. in the morning eating a microwaved margarita pizza because all I could have was, like, red and bread. You know, I couldn't eat anything else.
How did you get them? What would you have to, like, Uber Eats?
Uber Eats, Marks and Spencer. So, like the version of Woolworths.
Fuck, you've come a long way in 12 months,
and so I was just microwave that, and I was watching this art house film called Portrait of a Lady on Fire or something, and there's 2 young lesbians on fire, and me eating a microwave pizza, and then this huge rat comes in, or mice, huge mouse, and it stands on the mouse trap that I've put up and just goes on its 2 feet and starts laughing at me. And I'm just sitting there weeping, watching an art house movie with microwave pizza going, I know how to live. And that was rock bottom, man.
That's a dark
and so I wasn't even drinking. You know, I'm like, I can't even take the shit to town, you know?
Yeah.
It was just pure unadulterated misery. But then I got a text from the New Zealand government saying your visa's come through, and I was off, and Avatar was back on, and then I started to feel better. I went down.
That's almost an immediate turnaround. That kind of
and then my best
message.
mate Johnny Duncan. He was living in the south in the country, and he came in and said, "I'm getting you out of this house." And so we put my house in storage, and I went and stayed in his Airbnb in the countryside. And I started to feel better, and then they kicked my flight back 2 weeks. So I went, "What do I do?" And then the numbers were down in Italy.
Yeah.
So I went to Italy on my own. And I was reborn in the churches of Italy, and I went and saw Galileo's finger, and I went around Florence and Venice feeling better after the 8 weeks. And my mum said, "You died in that flat and you were reborn in Italy."
Really?
And there was no one in Venice. No one. The last time I went there, got hit by 1,000 selfie sticks. You know, Mum and I went. I was walking around like the Prince of Spain, going from island to island. Then I went around Florence and drove around Tuscany. It's like, what is going on?
Just completely empty roads.
Empty. And they were so happy to see you, and all the provinces were coming into Florence. They never get the tourist town to themselves. They were all dancing. All the restaurants were out in the main squares, and it was just me.
And you'd already had it, so you weren't too worried.
I was
about
coming
the
out. I was 8 weeks in. You're no longer contagious. It was over. And then I went to New Zealand. They hadn't even heard of it. You know? You know, and had 6 months there shooting Avatar. So it turned around.
Well, from dying in a flat in Notting Hill to being reborn in Italy, he's back down at the Casbah with his new book, Plum. Brendan Cowell. Thank you for joining us. What a great yarn.
Once you finish the book, I don't know if you have finished the book, but if you finish it, there will definitely be another conversation, because the end of the book is a real, oh, right.
Okay.
So I'd love to see what you thought. So, let's do it.
All right.
Do it again.
Beautiful.
Thanks, mate.
Thank you.